Namaskar, welcome you all to this session 11 on International Framework and Cooperation. The last lesson, session 10, in both the parts 1 and 2 was totally focused on climate risk resilience. Climate risk resilience is an integral part to the international framework like the IPCC, Paris Agreement, Sendai Framework. They guide nations in mitigating climate impacts and adapting to risks. While discussing this, a special focus will be on the disaster risk management, Sendai Framework, DRR roadmap and Bihar's pioneer efforts in this regard as a role model for other states to follow. Let us have some introductory discussion. There is a global impact of climate change that affects the ecosystem, disrupt the economies and threatens societal well-being, and hence there is a need of a coordinated central response. Climate change transcends national boundaries and hence requires a unified global approach. What will be the focus area of discussion today? One will be examining the key international frameworks such as the Paris Agreement and Sendai Agreement. Number 2 is highlighting the critical role of international cooperation and equity in building global resilience against the climate risks. Let us discuss key international frameworks. Number 1 is UNFCCC, United Nations Framework Conference on Climatic Change 1992. It was established as the international treaty for global climate action. This provides a platform for negotiating climate policies among various nations. Then came Kyoto Protocol in 1997 and it introduced legally binding targets for reducing the greenhouse gas emissions and it focused on developed nations particularly. The aim of protocol was to address historical responsibility for global warming, and then the historical agreement came in 2015 in the name of Paris Agreement. There is a marked paradigm shift with inclusive flexible commitments from nearly all the countries. It focused on shared but differential responsibilities for climate actions. Let us try to understand what happened under the Paris Agreement. The core goal fixed was limit global temperature rise to below 2 degrees centigrade and with an effort to cap it at 1.5 degrees centigrade above pre-industrial levels. And the number 2 is promote global actions for mitigation by reducing emissions, adaptation by building resilience and financial support for developing nations. Then for the nations, nationally determined contributions NDC, a bottom up approach allowing nations to set up their own climate targets in the name of NDCs, and it is reviewed every 5 years, fostering increasing ambition over the time. Next point to discuss is mitigational measures in the Paris Agreement. Number 1 is transition to renewable energy, and this is the major mitigational measure. There is a shift from fossil fuel to renewable fuel like solar, wind and hydropower, and thus trying to phasing out fossil fuels. Number 2 is enhance energy efficiency, adoption of energy saving technologies across the industries, transportations, building and in any domain where energy can be saved. And third, with the most vital, is the carbon sequestration efforts, enhancing the large scale afforestation and soil management to capture atmospheric carbon dioxide. The second part under Paris Agreement is adaptation measures. For adaptation measures, number 1 is climate resilient infrastructures, designing the roads, bridges and water systems to withstand extreme weather events. Number 2, early warning systems, implementation of advanced systems for predicting and responding to floods, hurricanes and droughts. And number 3 is sustainable agriculture practices, encouraging adoption of drought resilient crops, improved irrigation technologies and conservation methods to ensure the food security. Then under Paris Agreement is the financing. Under financing, around $100 billion was initially kept as a finance goal, which was subsequently enhanced to $300 billion at COP29 at Baku, Azerbaijan, annual target to assist developing nations with mitigation and adaptation projects. Second target for this climate fund is to aim to bridge the resource gaps between developed and developing nations. Then let us discuss the key financial mechanisms. Number 1 is Green Climate Fund. It supports large scale renewable energy and resilient building projects. Second is adaptation fund that focus on community based projects to enhance climate resilience. And the third category is public private partnership, mobilization of resources through green bonds and carbon pricing mechanism to fund sustainable development. Then what are the challenges the Paris Agreement is facing? Number one is the financial gaps. Insufficient mobilization of initially $100 billion, now making $300 billion annual target, particularly for adaptation projects. Second is challenge is accountability and transparency, ensuring nations adhere to their NDC commitments and provide reliable progress report. And the third is geopolitical tensions, differing priorities among nations, leading to delays and weakened collective actions. Next point is Sendai framework. It was adopted in 2015 and it was a trendsetter in the field of disaster management. It succeeded the Hyogo framework for action on 2005 to 2015. It has a clear vision and there is a clear shift from disaster response to proactive disaster risk reduction. There are four priorities of the Sendai framework and they are: number one is understanding disaster risk. Under this, collection of data, hazard mapping and risk assessment. Second is strengthening disaster risk governance that controls policies and legal framework for coordinated DRR efforts. The third is investing in resilience, financial and instructional investments to reduce vulnerabilities. Enhancing preparedness is the fourth measure. Early warning systems, community training, building back better post disaster actions. So all these are building the resilience. Then what have been the fundamental principles of the Sendai framework? The first one was people centered approach. It focuses on inclusion of vulnerable groups such as women, children, elderly and persons with disability in disaster risk reduction and implementation. Number two is focus on risk reduction. It shifts focus from reactive disaster response to proactive strategies aimed at preventing disasters. The third is Sustainable Development Goals SDG. It indicates DRR into Sustainable Development Goals to ensure that resilience building efforts contribute to long term developmental objectives. Next comes the objectives of Sendai framework. The first objective is risk reduction. Under the risk reduction target, the target is minimize disaster related mortality, aims to reduce the death caused by disaster through effective early warning system and preparedness. And the second is reducing the economic loss, focuses on reducing the economic impact of disasters on individuals, business and the government. The third is reducing infrastructural damage, seeks to protect critical infrastructure like hospitals, schools, transportation network to ensure continuity during and after the disaster. So what was the global disaster and resilience goal under Sendai framework? Number one is expand access to early warning system, prioritize timely alerts and information dissemination to prevent loss of life and property. Number two is risk information availability. It ensures communities and governments have access to accurate data for planning and response. Then monitoring the progress of Sendai framework. There is a monitoring tool that tracks country level progress toward achieving framework's targets such as mortality reduction and infrastructural resilience. And every year global assessment report in the name of GAR that provides a global overview of the disaster risk and resilience strategies, offering actionable insights for stakeholders. Then comes the role of UNDRR. The full form is United Nations Disaster Risk Reduction. So it is a group under United Nations and let us see what role they play. The first role is the policy advocacy. It drives the integration of disaster risk reduction into the global policy framework, including urban planning, climate adaptation and public health strategies. It advocates for multi-sectoral approach to effective comprehensive risk management. It focuses on capacity building by providing technical assistance to nations for risk assessment, early warning system development and disaster preparedness training. It focuses on building institutional and community capacities in high risk regions to enhance resilience. The third is science-driven solutions. It promotes research, innovation and use of data-driven tools to inform the policies and the strategies. It encourages collaboration among the scientists, policy makers and local communities for evidence based decision making. There is a model in Bihar that is called Bihar DRR model. Let us see the achievements. It implemented hazard mapping to identify flood prone and scientific zones, enabling targeted interventions. It established effective flood warning system, reducing casualties and economic loss in flood prone areas. Inclusive DRR initiatives implemented by the state actively involves women and marginalized class of groups, ensuring equitable participation in resilience building. The focus area of Bihar DRR is advocating build back better principles to ensure that the post disaster reconstruction improves resilience rather than restoring pre-disaster conditions, and its main focus is in the name of resilient villages, resilient cities, resilient critical infrastructure, fourth is resilient livelihood and fifth is resilient ecosystems. These are the 5 principles on which Bihar DRR is functioning, and it has become a role model for the whole nation to follow. Prior to Sendai framework, there was a HEGO framework and that was valid for the period of 2005 to 2015. I will not go much detail of that, but simply the overview I will talk about it. It was first global framework that was focusing on the disaster risk reduction, providing a roadmap for building resilience and reducing vulnerabilities. The 5 priorities make DRR national and local priorities, monitor risk and strengthen early warnings. Third is promote education and awareness. Fourth is address root cause of disaster vulnerabilities. Fifth is enhancing disaster preparedness, and through this they are focusing on DRR. The next topic to discuss is transitioning from HEGO to Sendai framework. Under this, proactive risk management measures, and that shifted the focus from disaster response to addressing underlying vulnerabilities and mapping risks. Climate related risks emphasize the role of climate change to exacerbating disaster risk and integrating climate adaptation into the DRR. Then climate targets and accountability introduced measurable global targets such as reducing disaster mortality and economic losses to improve monitoring and accountability. Now, role of technology in DRR. Let us discuss what role the technology is playing in disaster risk reduction and what is the future of those technologies. Use of artificial intelligence, GIS has great potential for prediction and forecasting. Then geographical information system and satellite data provide a real time mapping of vulnerable areas, enabling better planning and response. Mobile based disaster apps for real time alerts. Apps disseminate evacuation plans, emergency contact information and weather alerts directly to the community in the real time, and it increases accessibility of the disaster preparedness resources for rural and urban communities. Technology helps in collaboration for transferring technology under the UN framework, facilitating the exchange of advanced technologies between developed and developing nations to strengthen global disaster resilience. Examples include early warning system, renewable energy technology and advanced communication networks. Then integrating the frameworks. How integrating the frameworks between both the frameworks, Paris Agreement and Sendai framework. Both frameworks emphasize the integration of the climate adaptation and disaster risk reduction to enhance resilience. Both share the objectives include reducing vulnerabilities and strengthening preparedness for climate related disasters. Then comes climate resilient urban planning and green infrastructure. Both encourages nature based solutions like wetlands, urban forests and green roofs to mitigate urban flooding and reduce heat related problems. Integrate sustainable practices into zoning regulations and urban development projects. It focuses on mitigation, adaptation and co-benefits. Actions like reforestation contribute to both carbon sequestration called mitigation and erosion prevention in the name of adaptation. that encourages integrated approach to minimize resources and address multiple risks simultaneously. With this, let us come to the summary of our discussions. We addressed critical effects of mitigation in the name of greenhouse gas emission, adaptation in the name of resilience building, and disaster risk reduction under international framework. Second part, what we highlighted the importance of financing, innovation, capacity building to achieve global climate goals. And the next part of discussion had been the focus on equity, inclusivity and financial support. Under this, we stress the need to prioritize vulnerable nations and communities in climate action and disaster risk reduction efforts. Advocated for inclusive strategies for involving all stakeholders including marginalized groups. And third category was global solidarity that recognized international cooperation and partnership as the backbone of effective climate action and disaster resilience. And with this, I will like to close this session. Hope you have learnt the basic principles and ways to apply disaster risk reduction measures in the real time scenario. Thank you very much for joining the session. Meet you in the next session. Namaskar.